My name is Denise, and I stared at the divorce papers in my hands, still not fully believing this chapter of my life was over. After 10 years of marriage, James and I were officially done. The judge had granted me primary custody of our son, Tyler, who was now 8 years old. The property division trial had been exhausting but fair. We split everything down the middle, sold our house, and divided the money. "Mom, are we really moving?" Tyler asked, his small face peering up at me from the doorway of what used to be our living room. The room was now mostly empty, with just a few boxes stacked against the wall. "Yeah, buddy, remember I told you about Grandma's house? The big one where I grew up," I said, trying to sound upbeat despite the heaviness in my chest. "Is it bigger than this one?" His eyes widened with childish curiosity. "Much bigger," I smiled. "You'll have your own room, and there's a huge backyard where you can play." The truth was, I couldn't wait to leave this state. Too many memories of James's drinking, his late nights, and eventually catching him with that woman from his office. I needed a fresh start, and my hometown seemed like the perfect place to go. Plus, I already owned a house there, the one my father's parents had left me when they died. My father had passed away when I was 16. Just a year later, when I was still processing my grief, my mom met Bill. He was a widower with 2 young sons, both younger than me. They married after dating for a year, and suddenly our quiet household became a lot more lively with my new stepbrothers around. It was an adjustment living with Bill, Mark, and Jason, but I managed until I graduated and left for college in another state. That's where I met James. While I was away studying, my grandparents died one after the other, leaving me both houses, the big family home where my mom and Bill now lived with the boys, plus my grandparents' smaller house. James and I sold the smaller house, combined it with his savings, and bought the place we just sold. Meanwhile, my mom, Bill, and my stepbrothers continued living in my house. I didn't mind, I was hours away with my own life. Over the years, I'd visit them regularly, especially after Tyler was born. He'd played with my stepbrothers, though the age gap meant they were more like uncles to him than cousins. The last time we visited was probably 2 years ago, when Tyler was 6. That evening, I called my mother to tell her the news about our move. "Hey, Mom," I said when she picked up, "so, it's official. The divorce is final, and we've sold the house. Listen, I've been thinking, Tyler and I are going to move back home to my house." The line went eerily silent. "Mom, you there?" "Yes, I'm here," she finally said. "It's just, well, there's not a lot of space right now." I frowned. "What do you mean? It's a 5-bedroom house." "Well, you know Bill and the boys are here," she said, "and Mark's girlfriend moved in recently too." "Mark's girlfriend?" I said, surprised. I didn't know about that. "Well, it doesn't matter, it's a big house, Mom, there's plenty of room for Tyler and me too." Another silence. "I suppose we can free up some rooms," she finally said, her voice tight. Something about the conversation left me uneasy, but I pushed it aside. I had enough to worry about with the move, packing up 8 years of memories, and preparing Tyler for a new school. The next 2 weeks flew by. I arranged to work remotely. Being a graphic designer for an interior design company had its perks. We packed only what we needed, leaving behind furniture and anything that reminded me of my failed marriage. On the day we arrived, I drove up to the familiar driveway of my childhood home. The grand Victorian-style house looked the same, with its wraparound porch and large oak trees in the front yard. I felt a sense of homecoming as I parked the car. I walked up to the front door and, out of habit, pulled out my key. But when I tried to insert it into the lock, it wouldn't fit. I frowned, trying again, but it was obvious, the locks had been changed. "That's weird," I muttered to myself. Tyler looked up at me. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," I said quickly, "let's just ring the bell." After a moment, my mother opened the door. Her smile seemed forced, her eyes not quite meeting mine. "Denise, Tyler, you're here," she hugged us both, but something felt off. Come in, everyone's excited to meet you." As we stepped inside, I took in the familiar entryway with new eyes. It looked different, furniture I didn't recognize, pictures I hadn't seen before. In the living room stood Bill, looking older than I remembered, along with Mark and Jason, who had grown into young men since I'd last visited. There was also a young woman I hadn't met before, standing close to Mark. "Denise, welcome home," Bill said, stepping forward to shake my hand. Though I'd known him for years, something felt different now. There was a tension in the room that was almost palpable. "Thanks, Bill," I said, pushing away my discomfort. "This is Tyler, though he's grown a bit since you last saw him." My son waved shyly from behind my legs. "Let me show you to your rooms," my mother said, leading us upstairs. Tyler's room was at the end of the hall, the smallest bedroom in the house, barely big enough for a twin bed and small desk. "Mom," I pulled her aside while Tyler explored his tiny space. "This room is too small for him, he needs space for his toys and a proper desk for schoolwork." My mother's face tightened. "All the other rooms are occupied, Denise." "That's not really my concern," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "This is my house, and my son needs a proper room." My mother's nostrils flared, but she nodded stiffly. She called up to Mark and Jason, asking them to clear out the room they were using as a home gym. They didn't look happy, but they complied. I immediately ordered new furniture online for both Tyler and me. In the meantime, my mother brought us folding beds for the night. "Dinner's at 6, she said shortly before leaving us to unpack what little we'd brought. I sat on the edge of my folding bed, looking around at what used to be my childhood bedroom, now stripped of all personality and repurposed as some kind of storage room. Dinner that first night was excruciating. We sat around the large oak table that had been in my family for generations, the only sound being the clink of silverware against plates. Tyler kept shooting me nervous glances, clearly sensing the tension. Finally, Bill cleared his throat. "So, Denise, how long are you planning to stay here?" I paused mid-bite, fork suspended in the air. "Stay here?" "This is my house, Bill, Tyler and I are moving back permanently." 6 pairs of eyes darted between each other. My mother shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "Wouldn't it be better if you found your own place?" she suggested. "You have money from selling your house with James, right? You could get a nice apartment nearby." I set my fork down carefully. "That money is going into Tyler's college fund, I'm not touching it." The conversation died after that. I could feel the weight of unspoken words hanging over the table. After dinner, my mother pulled me aside. "Denise, we need to talk, come to the living room." I followed her, finding Bill already seated on the couch, holding a piece of paper. My mother gestured for me to sit across from them. "What's this about?" I asked. Bill handed me the paper. "House rules," he said firmly. "If you're going to stay here, we need some structure." I stared at the document in disbelief. There were at least 20 bullet points. I scanned through them. Denise must pay $500 monthly for utilities, no guests without prior approval, television must be turned off by 9 p.m., Tyler must maintain quiet at all times, laundry can only be done on designated days. The list went on and on, each point more ridiculous than the last. "You can't be serious," I said, looking up at them. "We're very serious," my mother replied. "We've maintained this home for over 10 years in your absence. These rules have kept the household running smoothly." I took a deep breath, trying to control my rising anger. "Mom, I need to remind you that this is legally my house. I'm the one who should be making the rules here, not following them." Mom's face hardened. "I've been the caretaker of this house since you left. That makes me the rightful mistress of this home." I was floored by her audacity but decided against causing a scene on our first night. "I'll think about it," I said, folding the paper and walking away. The next morning, the furniture I'd ordered arrived. I directed the movers where to place everything and helped assemble the pieces. Tyler was thrilled with his new bed and desk. After the delivery men left, I spent hours cleaning up packaging materials and organizing our things. I was just finishing when my mother appeared in the doorway, holding the rules paper. "You've violated rule number 7, she announced, "no strangers in the house without permission." I laughed, thinking she was joking. "Those were delivery men, Mom, they brought our furniture." "The rule stands," she said firmly, "this is your first warning." I stared at her, realizing she was completely serious. All right, I said finally, deciding to play along for now. The following day, I registered Tyler at his new school and bought groceries and household items. When I returned, I did laundry for Tyler and myself, wanting to have clean clothes ready for his first day. As I was folding the last of our clothes, my mother appeared again with the rules. Rule 15 states that the washing machine can only be used with permission. You're kidding, I said flatly. Second warning, she replied, walking away. That night at dinner, the atmosphere was even more strained than before. Everyone ate in silence, avoiding eye contact. I noticed that even Mark and Jason barely spoke to each other or their father. Mark's girlfriend, Sarah, kept her eyes fixed on her plate. A few days later, I was on a video call with my boss after 9 p.m., discussing a difficult client project. We were debating color schemes for a corporate lobby, our voices rising as we disagreed on approach. Suddenly, my door flew open, my mother stood there, face contorted with anger. It's after 9. You're being too loud, she shouted. I was mortified. Mom, I'm in a work meeting, this is important. I don't care, you're breaking the rules. I apologized to my boss and promised to call back. My mother glared at me once more before slamming the door shut. The next morning, I noticed my mother and Bill had left early. It was just Tyler, me, Mark, Jason, and Sarah at breakfast. The atmosphere felt lighter without my mother and stepfather present. So, I said casually, buttering my toast, did my mom and Bill make you guys sign a list of rules too? To my surprise, they all nodded. Jason, the younger one, pulled a crumpled paper from his pocket and slid it across the table. It was almost identical to mine, but with different restrictions. They gave me this when I turned 18, he said. Sarah smiled sadly. I got mine the day I moved in. And you all just accept this? I asked, bewildered. Mark and Jason exchanged glances. There's more, Mark said, getting up. Come with me. He led me to his room and pulled out a folder. Inside was a formal-looking document, a lease agreement. They make us pay rent, he explained, $700 a month, each of us. Wait, I said, stunned, they're charging you rent to live in my house? Your house? Sarah asked, appearing in the doorway with Jason. Yes, I confirmed, this house legally belongs to me. It was left to me by my grandparents. Their shocked expressions told me everything, they had no idea. Can I see those lease agreements? I asked. Mark nodded, gathering papers from his brother and Sarah. I examined each one carefully, making copies with my phone. These would be important evidence later. That evening, my mother and Bill returned. Dinner proceeded in its usual silent fashion until my mother cleared her throat after dessert. Denise, she said severely, you've violated all the rules we established. That's 3 warnings in your first week. I think it's time for you and Tyler to find other accommodations. The room went deathly quiet. No, I said calmly. What did you just say? My mother's voice quivered with indignation. I said no, I repeated firmly, I'm not leaving, this is my house. I've been taking care of this house for over 10 years, she snapped. I paid all the utilities in. And I paid all the property taxes, I cut in. You've only been paying for what you use, Mom, that doesn't make this your house. Bill slammed his hand on the table. You can't just waltz back in here after all this time and disrupt our lives. Actually, I can, I stood up, feeling stronger than I had in months. But what you two can't do is rent out rooms in my house without my knowledge or consent. I pulled out my phone and showed them the photos I'd taken of the lease agreements. Care to explain these? The color drained from both their faces. Tyler looked confused by the commotion, so I gently told him to go upstairs and get ready for bed. Once he was gone, I turned back to my mother and Bill. I want you both out of my house within a week, I stated. You've been taking advantage of me and these kids for far too long. You can't do this to us, my mother shouted. We'll sue you. For what? Taking back my own property? Good luck with that, I held up my phone. Besides, I have evidence that you've been fraudulently collecting rent. I wonder what a judge would say about that. Bill grabbed my mother's arm. Let's go, he muttered, pulling her away from the table. they retreated upstairs without another word. Mark, Jason, and Sarah sat in stunned silence. "Sorry about that," I said, sitting back down. "I didn't mean for things to explode like this." "Are you really kicking everyone out?" Jason asked, looking worried. "That depends. Do you all want to stay?" They exchanged uncertain glances. "I don't have anywhere else to go right now," Jason admitted. "I'm still in college, and apartments around campus are crazy expensive." "Same for us," Mark added, taking Sarah's hand. "We've been saving for our own place, but rent in this town is ridiculous." "Then stay," I offered. "No formal rent, just chip in for groceries and utilities, help keep the place clean. We'll figure out a fair arrangement." Their faces lit up with relief. For the first time since I'd arrived, genuine smiles appeared around the table. The next morning, my mother and Bill didn't come down for breakfast. The atmosphere was notably lighter without them. "So, what happens with your mom and dad?" I asked my stepbrothers as we ate pancakes. Mark shrugged. "Dad has his own apartment downtown. He's always had it, even after marrying your mom." "Wait, what?" I nearly choked on my coffee. "He's had his own place this entire time." "Yeah," Jason said, "they go there sometimes on weekends. Dad kept it as a backup, I guess." I shook my head in disbelief. "So they've been charging you rent to live here while they have another place?" "Pretty much," Mark confirmed. I spent the day working from home while Tyler explored the house and yard. My mother and Bill remained sequestered in their room, only emerging briefly for meals before disappearing again. They didn't speak to any of us. Over the next few days, my mother and Bill packed their belongings in cold silence. Mark and Jason helped Tyler adjust to the house, showing him the best spots to play and read. Sarah, who worked from home as a web developer, often joined me in the dining room for our respective workdays. I learned more about my stepbrothers during this time. Mark had graduated college last year and worked at a local marketing agency. Jason was studying engineering and had 2 years left before graduation. They were good guys, nothing like the tense, quiet people I'd first encountered upon arrival. "Mom and Dad really had you walking on eggshells, huh?" I commented one evening as we played board games in the living room. "You have no idea," Sarah said, rolling the dice. "Everything was a potential rule violation. We basically lived in our rooms to avoid trouble." "Dad wasn't always like this," Jason added. "He changed after marrying your mom." "My mom wasn't always like this either," I sighed. "She used to be warm and fun. I don't know what happened." "Money," Mark said simply. "They got greedy. Saw a big house they could profit from, created all these rules to control everyone, and threatened to kick us out if we didn't pay up." On the 7th day, I came downstairs to find my mother and Bill standing by the door with their suitcases. They didn't say goodbye, didn't look at any of us. They simply walked out and drove away. The house seemed to exhale when they left, as if a weight had been lifted. That night, we ordered pizza and ate in the living room, something that had been strictly forbidden under their regime. "To new beginnings," I said, raising my soda can. Everyone clinked cans, and for the first time since returning home, I felt like I had made the right decision. Later, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I wondered if I would ever speak to my mother again. The hurt ran deep on both sides. Part of me mourned the relationship we once had, but another part recognized that perhaps that relationship had been an illusion all along. 2 weeks passed, and life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Tyler started school and seemed to be adjusting well, making new friends and coming home with stories about his teacher and classmates. I found a good work routine, setting up a proper home office in what used to be my mother's sewing room. Without the oppressive rules hanging over everyone's heads, the house transformed. We took turns cooking dinner, ate together most nights, and actually talked to each other. The stepbrothers I barely knew became more like family with each passing day. One evening, as Jason helped Tyler with a science project in the kitchen, I found Mark sorting through some boxes in the garage. "Need any help?" I offered, rolling up my sleeves. "Just going through Dad's old stuff," he said, pushing a box aside. "He left some things behind." I picked up a photo album, flipping through pictures of Mark and Jason as kids, some with their father, others with my mother. I never asked how you felt about all this, them leaving, I mean. Mark sat on an overturned crate. Honestly? It's been a relief, those rules, the constant feeling of walking on eggshells. I don't miss that at all. But they're still your family. Yeah, and I'll probably call Dad next week, but living with them? He shook his head. I'm better off here, if you'll have me. Of course, I assured him, you and Jason are welcome to stay as long as you need. He nodded gratefully. There's something else you should know, he said, reaching into a drawer and pulling out a folder. I found these yesterday. Inside were bank statements showing monthly deposits of $2,100, exactly the total rent they had been collecting from Mark, Jason, and Sarah. They were saving it all, I murmured, flipping through the pages. Over $75,000 in this account. Yep, while we struggled to make rent, ate cheap food, and wore second-hand clothes, they were banking it all. His voice was flat, resigned. I brought the statements inside, adding them to the growing pile of evidence showing just how calculated my mother and Bill's scheme had been. That night, I lay awake thinking about my mother. How had she changed so drastically from the warm, loving woman who raised me to someone who would exploit her own family for profit? Was it Bill's influence, or had that side of her always been there, waiting for the right circumstances to emerge? The next morning, as I made breakfast, Sarah approached me hesitantly. Denise? Can I talk to you about something? Of course, I said, flipping a pancake. What's up? Mark and I have been talking. We want to move out by the end of the year. I turned to face her. You don't have to leave, you're welcome here. We know, and we appreciate that more than you know. She smiled warmly. But we want our own place. We've been saving up for a down payment on a small house. That's wonderful, Sarah. Thanks to you, we can actually afford it now. Without that ridiculous rent hanging over our heads, we've been able to save so much more. Over the next month, our makeshift family found its groove. Jason took over most of the yard work, Mark handled home repairs, Sarah decorated for the fall season, and I managed the household budget and cooking. Tyler thrived with all the positive attention from his cool uncles, as he called Mark and Jason. One Saturday, as we were having a barbecue in the backyard, Tyler ran up to me with a worried expression. Mom, there's someone at the door. My heart skipped a beat. Stay here with Sarah, I told him, heading inside. Through the front window, I saw my mother standing on the porch alone, clutching her purse. I took a deep breath and opened the door. Mom, I said flatly. She didn't meet my eyes or say a word. She just stood there, seemingly waiting for something. What do you want? I asked, not hiding my irritation. She finally spoke, her voice barely audible. I left some things in the attic. I stepped aside reluctantly. As she entered, I noticed how stiff and uncomfortable she looked, no longer the commanding presence she once was in this house. My mother went upstairs without another word. 20 minutes later, she came down with a small box. She paused momentarily to look around at the changes we'd made to the house, new curtains, rearranged furniture, colorful artwork on the walls, but said nothing. She walked to the door, not even asking about Tyler. I watched her go, feeling a complicated mix of emotions, anger, disappointment, and a lingering sadness for what our relationship had become. After she left, Mark joined me at the window. You okay? He asked. Yeah, I sighed, I don't know. I keep hoping she'll realize what she did, that she'll apologize or at least acknowledge it, but she can't even talk to me. Dad says they're doing fine, pretending none of this ever happened, Mark said, classic denial. Well, I'm not going to waste energy chasing a relationship with someone who can't admit they were wrong, I declared, more firmly than I felt. That evening, as the sun set over the garden and laughter filled the rooms that had once been so tense and silent, I pushed thoughts of my mother from my mind. I looked around at our unconventional family, my son, my stepbrothers, and Sarah, all people who had found each other through a strange twist of circumstances. You know, Jason said as we cleared the dinner dishes together, I used to hate this house, now I can't imagine living anywhere else. It's amazing what happens when you remove toxic people, Sarah agreed, putting away the leftovers. To found family, Mark proposed, raising his glass. To found family, we echoed. Sometimes families aren't what we expect them to be. Sometimes they're what we build from the pieces life gives us after everything falls apart. And sometimes, those rebuilt families are stronger than the ones we started with. As for my mother, I closed that door for now. I couldn't force her to see the harm she'd caused or to take responsibility for her actions. That was her journey to make, if she ever chose to. Meanwhile, I had a life to live and a real home to build, one based on mutual respect, honesty, and genuine care for one another.